Saitama got Saitama! You heard me right.
But how?
The caped bald wonder of the One Punch Man universe, Saitama, got buffed. Or maybe not, I guess, depending on how you perceive the story of One Punch Man. That's up to you, and you make that call yourselves. But the evidence at hand, we're gonna roll through this, but the evidence at hand continues to weigh in the favor of Saitama's limitlessness. Is that even a word? I think so. Limitlessness. Saitama is an absolute freak. You know it, I know it, and more evidence continues to pile on. So, if you haven't read the One Punch Man manga, spoiler warning because the anime is well behind the One Punch Man manga. But if you don't care per se, then all right, stick around, fair enough. But you should definitely read the One Punch Man manga. It's a very good read, and it has some very damn good artwork. Some of the best in the business, unironically. Some of the details, the environments, the characters, how they're drawn, it competes with the best out there. Berserk, Vinland Saga, Vagabond, you name it. One Punch Man is fantastic artwork, fantastic. And you definitely should read it. Not the one comic, because one comic is, well, I would suggest not reading one comic, because it is, one, we love you for One Punch Man, but that webcomic, oh man, it is just chicken scratch. It's weird. I have no idea how folks into that. Really have no idea. But the manga, bless, baby, bless. Though I said that as a Hunter x Hunter fan, and Togashi's chicken scratch sometimes can be, either way, not important. Not important. Let me get into what happened with the One Punch Man redraws. Now, if you don't know, the redraws are, well, they're just that. Murata actually redraws entire chapters. And a lot of times it's done by Murata to make sure that the events of the manga are synced up properly with the one webcomic. But also, based on what we've seen so far recently in One Punch Man, it's safe to assume that one is also giving Murata intel to add into the manga. So the manga has a lot of added details, as far as I understand, that the webcomic does not, as far as I understand. But one of the biggest tells for that was Blast. Blast coming in there is not in the webcomic, but it is in the manga. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. But essentially, again, the redraws are Murata redrawing, restructuring an entire chapter. And there is a lot of redraws, like 108, 109, 110, 111, 104. There are so many revised chapters for One Punch Man. And for this video, for Saitama's buff, we're gonna focus on the redrawn chapters of chapter 99 and chapter 100. These two chapters were redrawn, and these two chapters involve the Monster Association's Phoenix Man, who at this point in time had leveled up into a Dragon class threat versus Child Emperor, one of the S-class heroes. Now, if you read the original version of this fight, you should read the redraws absolutely, especially when the redrawn versions of the chapters are the ones that are going to be actually in the One Punch Man volumes when they are released. The redrawn fight between Child Emperor and Phoenix Man plays out very, very differently from the original version to the redrawn version. The key thing here is that in the original fight, Saitama wasn't involved in the slightest. But in the revised fight, Saitama is involved in the fight, and the key thing here for Saitama's buff is based on an ability that Phoenix Man now has in this redraw called the Phoenix Space. This is a very strange ability, but this involves costume wearers, like full-blown costume wearers. Like furries have this power, and it's a very scary power when you think about furries having this power. It's actually haunting. Mutant. This is a mental zone created by Phoenix Man that only can be shared by people in costumes. And then he explains how in ancient times, shamans would get dressed in certain ways and summon gods or spirits after all. I am rooted in the costume, and inside the costume there is another dimension. Later on in that chapter, he mentions to Child Emperor that their bodies within this dimension are just mental projections. And then he also mentions how this space is a spiritual space. So once again, it is a alternate dimension, a mental zone that only people that wear certain costumes and have a strong affinity for their costumes, like full-blown costumes, only they can enter this space, the Phoenix space. That's a very important thing to note. Now, you can break out of this space through sheer willpower, which we do see each other later on in this fight actually break out of, and the fight continues on. And it's a pretty cool and wonky fight at the same time. Phoenix Man is always transforming to different bird forms. Tri-Emperor has these crazy attacks, like this death sphere of high-paced jump rope and so on and so forth. And it's a pretty cool fight how it all plays out. And then at some point, Saitama gets caught in the mix because Tri-Emperor is trying to plunge Phoenix Man into an underground well. And then Saitama gets sucked in by the swirl of water, and then now Saitama is involved in the fight between Phoenix Man and Child Emperor. After Phoenix Man transforms into a very cute penguin form, and then he drops an out of nowhere. He pulls on an iceberg, he drops on Child Emperor, and then they continue to fight. As a barrage of attacks comes his way, and he's dodging attacks from Child Emperor, once again he takes him into the Phoenix space. And he's talking about various things about the true nature of the Hero Association, and he's trying to sway Child Emperor to become a monster and ultimately join his cause and take advantage of his seniority, I suppose, because Child Emperor, even though he's a genius, is still a kid, and so he's being swayed slowly by Phoenix Man until the impossible happens.
Bro, fight the power.
Saitama, in this alternate dimension, in this mental spiritual space, breaks in. He just breaks in. Now, mind you, before it was established that time actually flows very differently in this mental space, in this alternate dimension compared to the real physical dimension. Because when Child Emperor breaks out of it for the first time, he notices that only, I think 3 seconds have passed, even though they were talking for a few minutes in that spiritual space. Saitama breaks into the Phoenix space, and they got no idea what the hell is going on. Saitama just simply said, "It opened when I knocked." Then Phoenix Man, whoa. This is a spiritual space.
Okay.
And then Saitama says, there was a discussion going on in whispers, so I thought you might be talking about my head. Mad insecure about the bald head. But hold on now. Somehow, Saitama wasn't just able to break into another dimension. He was able to hear the whispers somewhat about what was going on in this other dimension.
That is blasphemous.
And because it's a dimension that's focused on their mental wavelengths, it's unclear if he actually broke into this space through mental means, and actually could have been physical means, or maybe both physical and mental means. And then now starts talking down to Phoenix Man about, if you want to do something, do it yourself. He's a child. Don't bother kids like that. He's scolding him in his own alternate dimension.
That's crazy, man.
Think of it like this. In Dragon Ball Z, you have the alternate space of the hyperbolic time chamber, right? Super Buu could yell and break out of that. Saitama could hear, in theory, what's going on in there, like he whispering, break in, even if this alternate dimension is a mental, spiritual space where their actual bodies are still in the real world, but they have mental projections in this space. Saitama isn't bound, yo. Saitama isn't bound. He's not bound by anything. He's just a raw ass nigga. And then when Phoenix Man undoes the space, he's like, oh, we're back. So did Saitama break in with his own mental? Or did he do it physically, like boom, I'm in? It's hard to gauge. It's unclear. He just did it. It's just Saitama. And then Phoenix Man is freaked. I mean, dude, honestly, it was freaky as all hell reading that. It was nuts. And then the fight proceeds on with Child Emperor getting the W in a pretty cool way. Saitama with the small assist. So overall, it was a pretty damn good fight. And Saitama's involvement in the fight makes it all the more interesting, but it's just crazy because Saitama is truly not bound by anything, yo. Not bound by anything, even another dimension. He's not bound, he'll just break in, bro. He'll break in.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
The reason why this is a buff is because this is arguably Saitama's best feat in the verse. You can argue that. Yes, you could. But at the same time, you could say, well, it's not a buff because, well, that's how Saitama is supposed to be written. This is an argument that you see with Saitama, especially when it involves like cross-series matchups, like Saitama versus Superman or Saitama versus Goku and so on and so forth. Saitama is written in a way where he is essentially supposed to be limitless. All the limiters that restrict human beings' capabilities have been removed. He is boundless in what he can do. And actually, in future redraws, it's hinted at that Saitama can adapt to any environment. Any environment, it doesn't matter what it is. Any environment, Saitama can adapt because Saitama is limitless in his power. And that's how he's written. Of course, the caveat here is at least until he's written where he does have a limit because of X, Y, and Z reason, if that ever happened. So, of course, it makes a lot of sense that Saitama could just punch through another dimension. Like, why not? Yeah, break space and time on some Gogeta Broly action. Why not? Just, who cares? Because Saitama is not bound by anything per se. But nonetheless, it's still evidence to indicate, hey, here's Saitama doing more broken shit. And him being able to break into another dimension and before hear whispers and what's going on in another dimension is something pretty damn broken. That's what I would argue. That's pretty damn broken. So when it comes to the evidence, this is a clear buff. But when it comes to how the character is written, you can't really say it's a buff because it all makes sense. If someone were to condense the mass of the universe into a marble and throw it at Saitama, he could just flick away like a booger. Because ultimately speaking, that's just how Saitama works. Ultimately speaking. So I think it's interesting. If you didn't know, now you know. Even if you're in another dimension, Saitama, if you're a bad guy, he'll find you.
And I will kill you.
But let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. I'm going to see you cats on the flip side. Be easy, stay safe, have a nice one.